There are roads that exist beyond the reach of ordinary lives, roads that do not appear on maps meant for everyone. This is not a journey toward luxury. This is a journey toward separation, because the moment a billionaire enters this road, he leaves the ordinary world behind forever. This gate does not open because of money. It opens because of identity. Most people spend their entire lives trying to access places like this, but access was never the real challenge. Becoming the person worthy of entry was the real transformation. As the gate opens, something deeper opens within him. This is where the outside world loses its influence. This is where noise disappears, because at this level, silence becomes the loudest form of control. This estate was never built to impress others. It was built to reflect internal evolution. Every structure here represents pressure survived. Every surface represents decisions most people were too afraid to make. Very few people ever experience life at this level of control, where movement responds to intention, where environments respond to presence. In that moment, he realizes something irreversible. He is no longer chasing power, he is living inside it. The moment the vehicle crosses the inner boundary, everything changes. This is no longer a place defined by geography. It is defined by authority. Most people never experience environments that recognize their presence. But here, every movement confirms one truth: he belongs here. From above, the scale becomes undeniable. This is not simply land. This is psychological territory. Every inch exists because of decisions made under pressure. And pressure is where billionaires are born. Approaching the entrance is not about entering a building. It is about entering a different version of reality. Most people never step beyond survival, but he stepped beyond limitation. And everything beyond that point became possible. As the doors open, silence welcomes him. Silence is not emptiness, silence is control. Very few people ever understand the psychological power of silence, because silence belongs only to those who built everything around them. Every step forward confirms something deeper. This environment exists because he refused to remain ordinary. Most people adapt to their environment, but billionaires design their environment, and that difference changes everything. From this position, perspective shifts completely. Problems become smaller. Fear becomes irrelevant, because when you control the environment cannot control you. In this moment, movement reminds him of velocity. Everything he built continues moving forward. Most people stop evolving once they succeed, but billionaires evolve faster after success, because success is not the destination. It is the beginning. Elevation is never accidental. Every rise is earned through discomfort. Most people avoid discomfort, but discomfort is the gateway to expansion, and expansion leads here. From this height, clarity becomes unavoidable. This is where vision replaces uncertainty. Most people never see their life from this level, because most people never climb this far. This moment cannot be explained. It can only be experienced. This is where everything feels different. This is where identity becomes permanent, because once someone reaches this level, there is no returning to who they were before. This is where control becomes visible. Every system responds instantly. Most people never reach environments that obey their decisions without hesitation. But here, delay does not exist, because delay belongs to uncertainty, and uncertainty has no place in his world. Protection at this level is not about fear, it is about preservation. Billionaires protect what they built because they understand its true cost. Most people never build something worth protecting, but he did, and that changed everything. Every machine here represents movement towards something greater. Most people see cars, he sees velocity, because velocity determines how quickly reality can change. This is not about ownership, this is about confirmation. Confirmation that the impossible became real. Most people never experience this moment, but he stands inside it now. Time behaves differently at this level. It no longer controls him. He controls how it moves. Most people chase time, but billionaires design time, and that realization changes everything. Every step forward activates something new. This environment recognizes evolution. Most people live inside environments that limit them, but he built one that expands him. This is where decisions are made. Decisions that shape reality beyond these walls. Most people never experience this level of influence, but influence is the natural result of control. This jet represents more than transportation. It represents freedom from limitation. Most people remain connected to one place, but billionaires exist beyond location. Movement begins before departure. Every system prepares silently. Most people never realize when their life begins to accelerate, but acceleration has already started. This estate was never the final destination. It was the beginning of something larger. Most people stop when they arrive, but billionaires move forward, because forward is the only direction power understands. Every step toward the aircraft represents irreversible movement. There is no hesitation left. Most people spend their lives waiting for certainty, but certainty is created through action. And action is what separates billionaires from observers. Access like this is never given freely. It is earned through pressure and persistence. Most people never cross this threshold, but he already has, and crossing it changes identity forever. This moment feels different. This is where internal transformation becomes external reality. Most people never feel this shift, but he understands it completely. He is no longer becoming powerful, he already is. This environment was built for clarity. No distractions, no interruptions. Most people never operate in spaces designed entirely for focus, but focus is where expansion begins. Everything now moves according to intention. Nothing happens by accident. Most people react to life, but billionaires design life before it happens. And that difference defines everything. Acceleration begins quietly. Most people never realize when their life begins to change permanently. But this is that moment. This is where everything becomes irreversible. Movement creates separation. Separation creates clarity. Most people remain where they started, but he moves forward without hesitation. Speed removes doubt. Doubt belongs to those who hesitate. But hesitation no longer exists here, because clarity replaced it completely. This is where separation becomes complete. The world below becomes smaller. Most people never leave their psychological limits, but he already has. The estate was never the destination. It was the foundation. What comes next will redefine everything, because once someone reaches this level, they no longer follow the world follows them. At this altitude, the world becomes quiet again. Distance removes distraction. Most people never experience this level of separation from noise, but separation creates clarity, and clarity prepares him for what comes next. This space was built for focus. Every detail exists to eliminate interruption. Most people never operate in environments designed entirely for decision-making. But here, every second serves a purpose, because purpose drives everything forward. Time feels different now. It no longer feels limited. Most people feel controlled by time, but billionaires control how time is used, and that shift changes everything permanently. Preparation happens before arrival. Every system moves in anticipation. Most people never see the preparation behind power, but preparation is what creates certainty. This is where transition becomes real. A new location, a new phase. Most people never reach moments where everything begins to change at once. But he recognizes this feeling because he has lived it before. Arrival is never the end. Arrival is activation. Most people think reaching a destination means completion, but billionaires know it means expansion. Movement continues even after landing. Nothing stops here. Most people slow down when they succeed, but billionaires accelerate. This moment represents access to something deeper. Most people never cross into this world, but he belongs here. And belonging changes identity. Every step confirms transition. The environment responds differently here. Most people never experience this level of recognition, but recognition follows power. This is where the inner circle begins to activate. Systems already know he has arrived. Most people never see what happens behind the scenes, but this is where influence begins moving. Movement here is precise. Nothing is random. Every route has already been calculated. Most people never travel inside systems designed entirely around their presence, but this environment adjusts to him automatically, because power changes how the world responds. This city moves like every other city, but his experience inside it is different. Most people move through systems they do not control, but he moves through systems he influences, and influence creates silent authority. This building represents more than architecture. It represents convergence. Most people see height. He sees leverage, because leverage multiplies everything he touches. Access like this is never public. It exists for a specific level of existence. Most people never enter environments designed exclusively for decision makers, but he does, and that separates him completely. This moment marks transition into restricted territory. Most people never reach this level of access, but access is not the reward. Access is the responsibility, because responsibility creates irreversible change. Elevation always changes perspective. Problems lose their scale. Possibilities expand. Most people never rise high enough to see clearly, but clarity is where billionaires operate. This is where real decisions happen, not in public, not in noise, but in silence. Most people never see where influence truly originates, but this is where influence becomes reality. From here, control becomes visible. Everything below moves without awareness of him. Most people never experience this level of separation, but separation creates strategic advantage. This moment signals activation. Systems respond immediately. Most people never experience instant execution, but execution is what defines billionaires. This room exists for decisions that reshape reality. Most people never enter rooms like this, but he built his life to stand here. And now, the next phase begins. This room carries a different kind of silence. Not empty silence, decisive silence. Most people never experience environments where outcomes are shaped before words are spoken. But here, outcomes are already in motion, because preparation always moves ahead of action. Outside, the world continues unaware. People move inside routines they never question. Most people never realize how much influence exists above their awareness. But influence does not announce itself, it simply operates. This is where systems respond instantly. Numbers shift, structures adjust. Most people never experience the speed of true execution, but execution defines control, and control defines power. This moment feels different, a shift invisible to most, but he recognizes it immediately, because this is where decisions begin reshaping reality, and once initiated, they cannot be reversed. Time continues moving, but its meaning has changed. Most people wait for the right moment, but billionaires create it, and creation removes limitation completely. Communication at this level is never casual. Every signal carries purpose. Most people never experience conversations that influence entire systems, but he lives inside that reality. Descent does not mean retreat. It means transition. Most people misunderstand movement, but movement creates positioning, and positioning determines outcome. This world now responds differently. Access appears automatically. Most people never reach this level of authority, but authority follows transformation, and transformation is complete. Movement resumes immediately. There is no delay. Most people pause after progress, but billionaires accelerate beyond it because momentum creates dominance. The city feels different now, smaller, slower. Most people never experience this psychological shift, but perception changes everything because perception defines reality. Preparation has already begun again. Movement never truly stops. Most people never reach this level of continuous expansion, but expansion is his natural state now. Every step confirms irreversible progression. There is no return to the previous version of himself. Most people never cross this psychological threshold, but he already has. This environment represents continuity. The next phase has already begun. Most people never move at this level of precision, but precision defines billionaires. Movement becomes inevitable now. There is no hesitation. Most people stop before reaching this point, but he moves beyond hesitation completely. The inner circle is now active. Systems are already in motion. What happens next will redefine everything permanently, because this is where irreversible decisions begin. At this altitude, everything becomes clearer. Distance removes illusion. Most people never rise high enough to see their life from this perspective, but from here, he sees everything exactly as it is. And clarity changes everything permanently. This environment exists for one purpose: precision. Every detail removes distraction. Most people live surrounded by noise, but billionaires create silence, because silence allows perfect decision-making. Time feels different now. It no longer feels limited. Most people chase time, but he directs it, because control over time creates control over reality. Preparation is already complete. Every system moves exactly as designed. Most people never reach this level of execution, but execution defines billionaires. This location does not exist for the public. It exists for those who operate beyond limitation. Most people never arrive here, but he was never most people, and this moment confirms everything he became. Arrival here represents something irreversible. This is not expansion, this is evolution. Most people never reach this phase, but he already has. Isolation creates clarity. There are no external influences here. Most people never operate without external pressure, but billionaires design pressure themselves. This moment separates past from future. Most people never cross into this level of existence, but crossing it transforms identity permanently. The environment responds differently here. It recognizes authority. Most people never experience this psychological shift, but he lives inside it now. The next phase begins now. Everything has been prepared in advance. Most people never reach this level of execution, but execution is what defines billionaires. This road does not exist on public maps. It exists for controlled access only. Most people never travel paths designed exclusively for power, but he moves forward without hesitation, because hesitation no longer belongs to him. This gate does not open for visitors. It opens for decision makers. Most people never reach this level of access, but access is no longer the objective. Control is. This estate was not built for comfort, it was built for isolation. Isolation removes distraction. Most people never experience isolation by design, but isolation creates absolute clarity. Every structure here represents intentional separation. Nothing exists by accident. Most people live inside environments they never chose, but he designed this one himself. This moment confirms everything. He is no longer approaching power. He is operating inside it. Most people never experience this psychological shift, but this is where identity becomes permanent. Descent reveals deeper control. Not everything exists above ground. Most people never see the foundation beneath power, but foundations define stability. This is where influence becomes visible. Systems respond instantly. Most people never experience this level of execution, but execution defines billionaires. Everything is connected from here. Distance no longer creates limitation. Most people remain restricted by geography, but geography no longer restricts him. This is where decisions become irreversible. There is no uncertainty left. Most people never reach this point, but this point defines transformation. This moment cannot be undone. Everything begins moving instantly. Most people never experience this level of execution, but execution is now complete. Everything is now active. Systems respond without delay. Most people never experience execution at this scale, but this is where preparation becomes reality, and reality begins responding to him. From this perspective, scale becomes undeniable. The world continues moving, unaware of the forces shaping it. Most people never influence reality at this level, but influence defines his existence now. This environment reflects absolute control. Nothing happens by accident. Most people live reacting to circumstances, but he creates circumstances. This moment defines everything. There is no return to who he was before. Most people never reach this irreversible threshold, but this is where transformation becomes permanent. Every step forward confirms execution. Nothing remains uncertain. Most people hesitate at this stage, but hesitation no longer exists here. Isolation creates clarity. Clarity creates certainty. Most people never reach certainty, but certainty defines billionaires. The world below continues moving without awareness. Most people never escape limitation, but limitation no longer applies here. This moment confirms absolute control. He is no longer building power. He is operating inside it. Most people never reach this phase, but this phase defines him now. Movement begins again. Power never remains still. Most people stop after success, but success is only the beginning. Every step forward represents expansion. Expansion removes limitation. Most people never experience expansion at this scale. Execution is complete. Now comes continuation. Most people never reach this phase, but continuation defines dominance. Movement becomes inevitable. Nothing can interrupt this momentum now. Most people never reach unstoppable momentum. Momentum removes all resistance. Resistance belongs to uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer exists. This is where everything changes permanently. Most people never leave limitation behind, but he already has. The irreversible decision has been executed. Nothing will remain the same. What comes next will define legacy itself. The execution is complete. What began as a decision has now become reality. Most people never reach this phase, but reaching it changes everything permanently, because this is where legacy begins. There is no uncertainty left now. Every system moves exactly as designed. Most people live inside unpredictability, but billionaires create certainty. Time no longer feels like pressure, it feels like ownership. Most people are controlled by time, but he controls how time moves. The world continues moving below, but his position above it has changed permanently. Most people never rise above limitation, but limitation no longer applies here. Arrival now represents dominance, not transition. Most people never return from transformation, but he has returned as something different, something irreversible. Everything responds automatically now. There is no resistance. Most people struggle against systems, but systems now align with him. This moment confirms absolute completion. The journey has transformed him permanently. Most people never experience transformation at this level. He is no longer the person who began this journey. That version no longer exists. Most people never escape their former identity, but he has. Movement continues forward, because forward is the only direction power understands. Most people stop after reaching success, but he continues beyond it. This is where legacy becomes visible. Everything that was built now exists permanently. Most people never leave permanent impact, but this impact cannot be erased. This city moves without knowing what has already changed. Systems continue operating, unaware of the force behind them. Most people never influence reality beyond their immediate environment, but his influence now everywhere, and influence creates permanence. Access is no longer requested, it is expected. Most people spend their lives waiting for opportunity, but opportunity now responds to him automatically because authority has already been established. This environment reflects complete transformation. Every step forward confirms irreversible evolution. Most people never reach this level of certainty, but certainty defines billionaires. Elevation reveals the final perspective. Everything below continues moving without awareness. Most people never see beyond limitation, but limitation no longer exists here. This moment confirms absolute completion. The transformation is permanent. Most people never reach psychological dominance, but dominance defines his existence now. Perspective defines power. Power defines legacy. Most people never build legacy intentionally, but legacy has now been established. Everything that was once uncertain is now permanent. Most people never achieve permanence, but permanence defines his position now. Systems now operate continuously. Execution never stops. Most people never create systems that outlive their effort, but these systems will continue indefinitely. Time is no longer a limitation, it is an asset. Most people lose time without awareness, but he owns every moment completely. This is where everything becomes complete. There is nothing left to prove. Most people never reach this level of psychological certainty, but certainty defines him permanently. Movement continues forward. Expansion never stops. Most people remain static, but expansion defines billionaires. Perspective now exists beyond location. Most people never see beyond their environment, but his perspective now exists beyond limitation. Legacy continues even in absence. Presence is no longer required. Most people never create lasting impact, but impact now exists permanently. This journey has reached its final form. Transformation is complete. Most people never become what they were meant to become, but he has. Legacy has now been established. Nothing will reverse what has been built. Most people never reach this level of completion, but this is where his story becomes permanent. The world continues moving forward, but his position within it has permanently changed. Most people live inside temporary moments, but this moment is permanent, because permanence defines legacy. Every structure below represents opportunity. Opportunity he now controls completely. Most people spend their lives chasing opportunity, but opportunity now follows him. This moment confirms his final evolution. He is no longer becoming powerful, he has become power itself. Most people never reach this psychological state, but this state defines billionaires. The horizon represents continuation. Expansion never truly ends. Most people stop expanding after success, but expansion defines legacy. Even in stillness, his presence remains. Most people require constant effort to maintain influence, but influence now exists independently. There is nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove. Most people never experience completion, but completion defines legacy. Perspective now exists beyond limitation. Most people remain confined to their environment, but he has moved beyond it completely. This journey was never about wealth. It was about transformation. Most people never complete transformation, but transformation is now permanent. Everything that began as vision has now become reality, reality that cannot be undone. Most people never build permanent reality, but he has. This is where legacy becomes eternal. Nothing will erase what has been built. Most people live and disappear without impact, but his impact will remain forever.